Hello Gaudi class, and welcome to our history lesson today. Over the past few lessons, we've been looking at different people and what they contributed to the space exploration. Today, we're going to be having a look at Tim Peake and what he did, who he is. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that when we talk about the past, we're using the right words. So Tim Peake is a British astronaut, and he lived on the International Space Station for 6 months. He was the first British astronaut after Helen Sharman to travel to space for 20 years. So that's a long time that we didn't have anyone British in space. He's actually the first person in space to ever have the Union Jack, the British flag, on his spacesuit. So every astronaut, cosmonaut that goes into space has the flag on their uniform. But he was the first person to actually be recognised as a British astronaut and had the British flag on his spacesuit. So this is Tim Peake. This is Tim Peake in the ISS. It's a very cool window to be looking at. And I don't know if you can look, if you look really carefully, you can see that what he's actually looking at is the Earth beneath him. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at a PowerPoint on Tim Peake, but there's also a video that you can watch, which is the link is underneath this one, and he's talking about an experiment that he did when he was in space on dizziness. Where you go round and round and round and round. So have a look at that and see about his dizziness. So let's have a look. Major Tim Peake, so you can see there, he's got the British flag, the Union Jack on his uniform. And there he's got one with his name on it, so you know it's him. So Tim Peake was born in Chichester, which is in England, on the 7th of April 1972. So that makes him nearly 49 years old. He had a passion for adventure from an early age. His hobbies as a child were hiking, which is walking, kayaking, which is going in a boat and rowing, and climbing. I wonder if he climbed those things that we looked at in PHSE the other day on the high ropes. At the age of 13, his dream of becoming a pilot became a reality when he took control of an aircraft for the first time. And by the time he was 18, he was offered to join the British Army Air Corps. So he was a soldier. He qualified as a helicopter flying instructor in 1998, which means that he could teach other people how to fly helicopters. And from 1999 to 2002, he served as a platoon commander with the US Army, so the United States Army, flying Apache helicopters. He was accepted into the European Space Agency, the ESA program, on 18th of May 2009. And you remember yesterday when we said that Helen Sharman had answered an advert on the radio, and she'd been chosen from 13,000 applicants. He was chosen from 8,000, so not quite as many, but still an awful lot of people for him to be that one person who was chosen. That's quite amazing. So he moved to Cologne in Germany and entered basic training at the European Astronaut Centre, which probably isn't called anything quite as amazing as Star City. As part of his training, he had to learn to speak Russian because other people on the space station either speak English or Russian, so he could talk to everybody. He had to spend 12 days living under the sea, which is definitely not something I would want to do. Because under the sea, you've got that weightlessness that's a bit mirrored in space. So you can't actually train in space, but that's as good as it gets. And that's the nearest they can do. And he had to complete a winter survival mission. There's him packed up against the cold. So Major Tim Peake, he was a major in the army, that's why he's called Major Tim Peake, became the first British astronaut in space for over 20 years. When he blasted off from the International Space Station on the 15th of December 2015. And he travelled in a Russian Soyuz rocket launched from Kazakhstan. And I was telling the other year 2 teachers when we were talking about this that I can remember this really, really well. I was teaching year 5 at the time. Those children are now in year 10. And it was first thing in the morning for us. It was about 9:30, and we were supposed to have an English lesson. And instead of doing English, we had all 90 children in the year group and all the adults squashed in one classroom as we watched it live. And it was really quiet. You can imagine you've got 97 people in one room. You'd expect there to be a lot of noise. It was silent. We watched the countdown. We watched the program that they were showing on the television. We watched the countdown, and we watched him blast into space. And you can probably find that as a YouTube video, to be honest with you. Not us watching it, but him going into space. But it was absolutely silent in that classroom as we watched it. It was very exciting. And nobody wanted to do any English after that when we'd gone off and the program started just talking. We all just wanted to carry on sitting there. It was just really, really momentous. And you knew you were watching something quite historic. So he lived aboard the International Space Station for 6 months, and he conducted experiments in microgravity, and that's how things move in space, and kept he had like a web chat with children in schools on Earth. And he used the gym on board to ensure his muscles stayed strong. And I don't know if you can see this, it looks very, very strange. But he's actually on a running machine. And of course, because in space you float, on the running machine, he had to be tied down. So these are weights that are adjusted to take into account his body size and weight. And he actually, one of the things he did was he ran the London Marathon. So at the same time as it was being run on Earth, and when they said go, he started running, and he ran the 26 miles that they run for the London Marathon. Not in very good time, but he ran it on the International Space Station at the same time. So the International Space Station is the size of a football field. So if you imagine looking out at the Astro that we've got at the secondary school, it is absolutely huge. And it travels at a speed of 17,500 miles per hour. So your car, if it's going fast on the motorway, will be doing 70. So this is 17,500. And it's 240 miles above the Earth. I can't even begin to imagine how far that is. And it takes it an hour and a half, 90 minutes, to get all the way around the Earth. So it goes around the Earth every 90 minutes. So this picture here is of the International Space Station. Some astronauts. There's some astronauts outside going for a moonwalk. Can you see that long arm that they're attached to? Tim Peake had to do a few of those. And that's a picture of what the International Space Station looks like as it goes past us on a clear, beautiful starry night, not in Langley or Slough, where it's full of air pollution. So Major Peake returned to the Earth on the 18th of June 2016, and he came down in a Soyuz capsule, which reached speeds of 28,000 kilometers an hour, 25 times the speed of sound. I can't even imagine how fast that goes. The Soyuz capsule made a bumpy touchdown as a result of high winds affecting the region of Kazakhstan where the landing site was. Can you imagine coming back down to Earth with lots and lots of bumps? You'd probably feel very, very sick. And there's Tim Peake being carried out of the capsule, and he can't walk because his muscles are all a bit funny, and you feel a bit yucky after coming back down to Earth. But we're going to be talking about that in a science lesson. So Major Peake's first impression of Earth was that the smells were really strong. Can you imagine that's the first thing you think about, the smells? So astronauts go through a period of readjustment when they return to Earth, as their bodies get used to withstanding the full effects of Earth's gravity once again. So Major Peake admitted to feeling terrible shortly after his landing, but quickly began to feel better. So here are some really cool facts. Tim Peake spent 186 days in space. The ISS moves 10 times faster than the speed of a bullet coming out of the gun. He went round the Earth, he orbited the Earth approximately 2,800 times. Wow. So he travelled approximately, are you ready for this? 114,240,000 kilometres whilst he was aboard the International Space Station. Phenomenal. Now, Mrs. Jalloff and I have decided this is our favourite one. Tim Peake was temporarily, that means not forever, just for a short while, 5 centimetres taller in space than he was when he left Earth because of the effect of having no gravity. His body wasn't being pulled down to the Earth, so he was actually 5 centimetres taller. So Mrs. Jalloff and I have decided this is a good reason for us to go into space, to be 5 centimetres taller. And this was my favourite fact. He dialed the wrong number from space and asked, "Is that planet Earth?" I think that's quite a cool trick to play on somebody. So this is a picture of him now. He's 48 years old, and he lives with his 2 children and his wife, Rebecca. So over the last few lessons, we've learned about Neil Armstrong, who was this incredibly famous man, did this amazing thing where he was the first person to ever step foot on the moon. And now we've looked at Tim Peake, who is famous for us. And that's really important to remember. If you went to anywhere around the world and asked them who Neil Armstrong was, they would be able to tell you. If you asked them who Tim Peake was, they wouldn't. Tim Peake isn't important for other people. People who are fascinated by space might know the name Tim Peake, but we're fascinated by him because he was British, and that's really important for us. So I've got a question for you. You might want to talk to your teddy or your partner if you've got one in the room, or your monkey if you're me. If you had to choose between Tim Peake and Neil Armstrong, which astronaut would you like to be? That's a tough question. Which one would you like to be? So you might want to pause the video, have a think about that, have a talk to somebody, maybe record your answer, write down your answer. You don't have to, but maybe you'd like to. That's quite a cool question. So your task, and you've got a choice of 2 ways to do it. Your task is to apply to be either Tim Peake or Neil Armstrong. And why you chose that astronaut. So you can write a letter, you can write it down, and we'll have a look at the letter on the next page in a moment, and say why you chose Tim Peake or why you chose Neil Armstrong, what was special about them, and what was your favourite thing that they did. You could, if you don't want to write it, you could record a video. So you could record a video of you telling NASA which astronaut you chose and why you chose that one. Okay, so you need to make sure you say which astronaut you've chosen, what was special about them for you, what makes them special for you, and what the favourite thing that they did, again, for you. Might not be the same. So I have written my one on Tim Peake. So this is my letter to the director of NASA. And I've started, like we do with the letter, with my introduction. I am writing this letter because I have been learning about space travel in history. I have learned about Neil Armstrong being the first man on the moon and Tim Peake being the first British astronaut to live on the ISS. I would absolutely love to be just like Tim Peake. The reason I have chosen Tim Peake is because he lived on the ISS for 6 months. During that time, he did many exciting things, such as running the London Marathon in space, completing many spacewalks, which is where you go outside the rocket, outside the space station and walk in space, making phone calls from the ISS to Earth, and carrying out lots of scientific experiments. Yours sincerely, Mrs Gabella. Now, you don't have to choose Tim Peake. You could choose Neil Armstrong. I mean, the introduction wouldn't be very different, but you learned about Tim and you would absolutely love to be Neil Armstrong, and because he was the first man to ever set foot on the moon, and he got recorded, and he's gone down in history for being famous for that. And you think about the things he got to do. So he got to walk on the moon, he got to put the American flag on the moon, he got to conduct experiments, bring back things from the moon. So I don't mind if you choose to write a letter. You can handwrite it, you can write it on the computer if you want to. And because I know we're doing a lot of writing, and I do keep saying I'm sorry for this, you could dictate it and have an adult write it. That does not mean that you turn around and go, Daddy, Daddy, will you do my homework for me, please? It means that you tell them what you want to write and they write it for you. That's absolutely fine. Not that they do your writing. So you can write it, you could type it, you could get an adult to write it for you, or you could just record yourself saying it. And I look forward to finding out who you'd all like to be when you put it onto Tapestry for me.